Outline of the seminar is basically I'll be talking about cooperative coevolution, which is an evolutionary computation method, and some of the problem decomposition methods used there, and application of cooperative coevolution for neuroevolution, and further application of that to time series prediction in the theme or the field of cyclones and other related areas. So the first, the way that we are doing research in our group is basically we are focusing on two different areas. One is the methodology research and the other is applications research. So we try to develop new novel methods for training neural networks, and they are feed-forward and recurrent neural networks. And then we use those same training algorithms and the neural network architectures for some interesting application problems that have not been solved before using these methods. So we focus on both sides of research in computational intelligence, just not on methodology, but also in application. So the major training algorithms, what are neural networks? They are biological, systems motivated by the biological brain that has trillions of interconnections with billions of neurons. And the diagram that you see, the picture that you see there is an example of the neural network in the human brain, the way the neurons are connected and the synapses. There's a lot of wiring, there's electrochemical processes going on in there in the human brain. And neural network is a very rough approximation of the process. So major neural network architectures are feed-forward and recurrent neural networks. In recurrent neural networks, there is feedback of signals. Feed-forward neural networks, the diagram is given there, where there's just forward information processing. So we have input, hidden, and output neurons. And then recurrent neural networks, there's backward information processing, and which is very much applicable to time series prediction. And we'll see that in the future slides. The diagram of the recurrent neural network that is shown there is just a plain view of the recurrent neural network architecture. And here we can see that that is the plane view, and that's basically the side elevation of the architecture. So feed-forward neural network, whatever a feed-forward neural network can do, a recurrent neural network can do when it is unfolded in time, and recurrent neural networks can be very natural when it is applied to time varying signals, because the network architecture can unfold in time depending on the different number of time steps, especially in time series prediction problems. So neuro-evolution, the traditional training algorithms of feed-forward and neural networks are backpropagation and backpropagation through time respectively, and they both use gradient descent, which is an algorithm based by calculating gradients, which is used to calculate the weight update of the neural network. In other words, as the neural network is learning, it has to update some parameters, which are the weights, or in the biological term, synapses, and those parameters needs to be updated, and there are several different algorithms used to update those parameters. So the issue with the gradient descent, because it is a local search method in the past, it had some issues, so especially training recurrent neural networks for long-term dependency problems, and that is why neuro-evolution, one of the motivations to use neuro-evolution, because neuro-evolution is essentially evolutionary computation method that does not rely on gradient information, but updates the weight in a very heuristic manner. So they can be neuro-evolutionary algorithm does not care about the architecture of the neural network. So when you compare it to backpropagation, the same backpropagation algorithm that is used for training feed-forward cannot be used for recurrent neural network or other architectures, but the same neuro-evolution algorithm can be used for any network architectures as long as you can calculate the fitness, which can be the root mean squared error or some other errors of the network. Cooperative coevolution, another methodology, and basically my PhD kind of dealt with cooperative coevolution and neuro-evolution, and it is a way to decompose the bigger problem into smaller sub-problems. So it's a type of divide and conquer evolutionary approach, so instead of having one bigger population, there can be several subpopulations that is dividing the problem into smaller bits and then solving them. And the problem at hand in neuroevolution is decomposition of the neural network architecture into smaller bits, smaller pieces. And this diagram here, you can see that there is CC for neuroevolution. So here is input, hidden, and output layer. So if you want to break down, rather than having one single subpopulation where all the layers are encoded, you could have two subpopulations where input to hidden layer weights are in one subpopulation and hidden to output layer weights are in one subpopulation. So that's one example of a decomposition. In this case, there is, for each node, all the links that are attached to that node, they are into separate subpopulations. And there are also decomposition strategies where for each synapse there is a separate subpopulation. So there are a number of very few different ways of encoding or breaking down the neural network architecture. During my PhD, I developed one of them, which is just very simple, but very effective when you compare to the other methods. It's neural level encoding or neuron level problem decomposition, as shown there. It is published in the Neurocomputing Journal in 2001. And the synapse level encoding is when all the different subpopulations have synapses have separate subpopulations, and the network level is just one single population, and enforced subpopulation is all the incoming and one outgoing link. So they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Actually, in 2010, I checked if synapse level encoding, which was quite popular at that time, can be used for pattern classification problems using feed-forward neural networks, and this was not successful. And this method, neural level encoding, performed twice better than synapse level encoding. So those reports I have published some places. Recently, when I joined the USP in the last it's about 2.5 years for me here, I've begun work, as soon as I joined, I began work on competitive island-based cooperative coevolution. So this is basically the work based at USP during the 2.5-year period. So what I thought, during my PhD, what I was doing, I developed an algorithm that during the evolutionary process switches from one subpopulation to another. So it would start from synapse level and then go to neuron level and then finally to network level. But when that was one of the major contributions of my PhD. After that, when I joined USP, I thought I had this idea that why, instead of adapting the problem decomposition over time, why not compete them and give them equal time So, so I built a framework where these 2 or 3 different problem decomposition methods are competing over time. And the reason I developed that framework was in cooperative coevolution, there's a bigger issue at hand, which is known as one is in evolutionary algorithms as well, the curse of dimensionality. As the training problem or the evolutionary algorithm is applied to bigger instances of the problem, like large-scale optimization problem or larger neural network architectures or structures, when more dimensions are involved, then it does not scale well. This is for evolutionary algorithms. Another issue is for cooperative coevolution is when you break down the bigger problem into a smaller problem, it is not that you just break down as you feel like. You have to look at the way you should break down that the smaller pieces have less interaction with the other pieces. So this is the separability problem, where in large scale or global optimization problems, there is a complete set of benchmarks that are known as fully separable or partial separable problems, where you cannot break down the problem just straightforward. But the fully separable problems are where you can break down the problem into smaller pieces easily. A neural network is like a partially separable problem, where some of the input weights, possibly these weights depend on the performance of these, depend on them. So we need to break it down into a way where the breaking down does not affect the overall structure of the network. Actually, it's just the separability is a very theoretical problem. We have done a lot of experimentations, and it's a subject area of its own. So I not want to cover it right now on that level. But basically, what we have done through that, we found that different problem decomposition methods have different behaviors during the evolutionary process, and it's good to capture all of the strengths of them and avoid or eliminate the weaknesses over time. And that is when competitive island-based cooperative coevolution works very well. For example, in this figure here, we have synapse level island, and there is neural level island, and they are competing. You give them some time each, and the other one some time, and then you check which one is better, and then the better one, the winner island, you use the best solution and inject it into the loser islands. So this is just 2 islands, and there's also a 3-island implementation, which is in the paper. And the collaboration, that is the collaboration where we are injecting solution from the island to the other. But it is not as simple as it sounds like. Actually, the programming of this took me some harsh, about 6 to 8 months of bug tracking, and maybe those were some of my bad days. Usually it should have taken me a month, but sometimes it happens when there's a small problem. It's just so irritating. And this is the best solution, let's say, from one island, and the other one is the best, the weakest solution from the second island. And you have to inject this by concatenating all the elements, maybe all the weights or synapses from there, and pass it there. But the fitness, which is the error from there, you're passing it to the other island. So this is one, and the programming was done so that it takes in account the other way around, or if there's another third island, and so on. Anyway, so basically it worked, and we found that the performance, if you give the same evolution time when you compare to a standalone method, the performance is much better. At least there's 20% increase in terms of better accuracy. So what those problems we applied to were chaotic time series problems, and the three major benchmark chaotic time series were Lorentz, Mackey-Glass, and Sunspot. And these chaotic time problems, the way to evaluate them using the root mean squared error, RMSE, or the normalized mean squared error. Actually, these experiments, this is the example of the Sunspot time series where it's not very clear here, but the red and the green is the training, one is the actual, the red is the predicted, and the original is the green in green. And basically we compared this with several other methods from literature. And these are all my methods during the days of PhD and afterwards. And we are beating several methods from literature in the benchmark problems in terms of having lower root mean squared error, for example. Hmm. Oh, this area is just one step ahead prediction. So it's like you do just one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that the point in that graph around 250 is the. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very chaotic environment here, and just one step prediction. If it is that much, then imagine how much multiple step prediction will be out of boundary here. But these were the problems that we looked at, and we also compared with some of those econometric problems like ARIMA and ASH-GASH and so on, but we did not put in this paper because this is, I think, results from a conference paper, so we had to cut down, but we did beat those methods. Discussions, actually this is not, what I'm talking about is actually 1 year ago we did this work. So what we found then, a year ago, was that the proposed method was showing better performance, and the island-based method was good. So it was published in the IJCNN 2014 in China. I presented that, and this year the paper came in IEEE Transactions on Neural Networks. Sorry, it's called Neural Networks and Learning Systems these days. We are still looking for a student maybe in the future to develop a multi-threaded version of the algorithm. So the proposed approach, because it is an island-based method, this can be one thread and this one can be the other thread. So in this way we'll even be very fast, I mean 2 times faster in terms of execution time compared to another algorithm. So the multi-threaded is something to look forward to. And we yet have to apply this into control problems. We have tried it in pattern classification and shown some interesting work with Mr. Gary Wong, who will be presenting probably in Ireland this year in July. So we have done this future work, so it's but we have not done this one. And by exploring other problem decomposition methods, we have done a bit of that as well, but that paper is still being written by a student. What we did from last year, after this we saw was quite good, then one of my master students, Kavitesh Bali, he started to use that algorithm and then apply it to global parameter optimization problems. So we got next month, May, we are going to present that in Japan. And so it's the same algorithm, but the problem is these are very difficult problems. This is one instance of the problem with a raster. This is just 2-dimension problem. We visualize things from of 2 dimensions, but we applied it to 60 and 100 dimensions, and also 500 and 1000 dimensions. And we found that the method does quite well. 2 islands, and then currently we are submitting a paper to IEEE transactions, and that is for 3 islands. So for global optimization, more applied mathematics here. And we are doing some more work on that, where we are checking if you increase it to 5 or 8 or 10 different islands, more problem decomposition, and compete them, what is the behavior of the algorithm over time. So a lot of experimental and theoretical work we are doing now. Hopefully I'll present that, or he will present that after a year. Okay, going back to the application. So cyclones, there's already a lot of work done in the area of tropical cyclones, but not much work through the advanced computational intelligence methods. So we thought we did a bit of literature. We found that there was very little work done using neural networks, and then also very little done using neuro-evolution. So this is just showing the paths of the tropical islands in the South Pacific. This diagram is showing that all the areas where most of these tropical cyclones occur. So this is kind of our area here, the South Pacific Ocean, and this is South Indian Ocean. And we have applied the methods to both of those data sets. The first, actually this was the second part that we did, but I'm showing it first. For rapid intensification using co-evolutionary neural networks, and this area was part of Miss Kavina Dayal's master's thesis when she was a research assistant in PACE. Then she told me about this rapid intensification. Then I asked her, did you build a software that automatically detects rapid intensification cases? And what is the definition of rapid intensification? Is when basically cyclones, they are time series, so you have the time series in terms of the wind intensity. So let's just concentrate on the wind intensity. And if the wind intensity in the 24 hours, it increases more than 30 knots, then that cyclone is a rapid intensifying cyclone. And we have to be very careful of that type of cyclones. And there have been a number of cyclones that were in that category in the South Pacific, more than 100 of the 400 cyclones that we had in the last 30 years were of the rapid intensification type cyclones. So I thought that she has done the analysis and so on. Let me try to capture whatever she's done and build an intelligent system using co-evolutionary recurrent neural networks. So what we did was the investigation. Okay, cyclones, another thing, important aspect of cyclones is it's a very interesting problem in terms of time series, because it's a multi-dimensional time series problem. It's just not any time series problem. It has the wind intensity, that's one dimension, and then there's the latitude, another dimension, and longitude, and there are other dimensions that we have not actually gone into that area, which is probably the sea surface temperature, the humidity, pressure, and so on. So it's a very interesting problem. So we were quite interested to know that whether the track, the way the cyclone is moving, actually it has any effect in terms of the rapid intensification of the cyclone. And so we, in one setup, we used the latitude, longitude, and the input. What we did was we consider that an example of cyclone, okay, like for example, this is like a time series. So what we would do is check all the cases there are rapid intensification by checking the past 24 hours of each case. And if there is more than 30 knots, then we grab that case and we record the last 24-hour recordings of the wind intensity. So we grab all those cases of all the cyclones, and then we train the neural network to predict whether there is going to be a rapid intensification. And another method was where we did not have the latitude and the longitude, but we just had the wind intensity as the to check the rapid intensification. So yes, we had a testing data set, and this is for South Pacific. What we did, we went further, which was basically my idea. Let's not just have the 30 knots. Let's also take care of the 20 knots or more than 40 knots. So we made it them 20 knots to case 1, 30 knots to case 2, and 40 knots and above to case 3. So in the training set, we had 73 total cases. You see one case 3. So one of these cyclones, maybe it must be Kina or BB, one of those, because this is the South Pacific. And there's the Indian Ocean, we have more cases. So we built our training and testing data set. And the figure below, it shows the cyclone duration and the number of rapid intensification cases. So each of those cyclones for the South Pacific, there are some cyclone, the duration is like, if it is 100, that means it's 100 times 6 hours. So the recording is taken every 6 hours. So 50, then it's 50 times 6 hours. So some cyclones here, you can see one of these cyclones is like more than 100 points, or 2 or 3 of them. So some cyclones were there for 2 to 3 weeks in the South Pacific. And we can see that some of those cyclones that had longer duration, of course, had more rapid intensification, number of rapid intensification cases. We found that in one cyclone there were 2 or 3 occurrences of rapid intensification cases. And at the moment we are just doing assessment. We haven't trained the neural network. This is just assessment of the data. And similarly for the other problem, so rapid intensification cases and duration. Actually that was the training data set. This is the testing data set. And then we trained recurrent neural networks and found the different hidden, for different hidden neurons, what are the performances. And each hidden neuron, we do 30 experimental runs, and then we report the mean and the standard deviation, actually mean and the confidence interval. And we use the RMSE and mean absolute error. And this is just from the 30, just for one of those experimental runs, that we want to see the prediction of the neural network. So that was for the training data set. This is the actual green, and then that's the predicted red. And you see that there is this actual ones, those that are this rapid intensification case 3, which is more than 30. The neural network was not able to predict very well. And similarly here. So that was training and this is testing. Otherwise, the other cases, it's quite close, that it is actually, it can be used as a warning system, but our errors were not as good as it could be. So there's, of course, more scope to use other algorithms. With the same data set, we can train some other algorithms and check, compare the results, and that we will do in the future. Other neural network architectures, we have used recurrent. Maybe if we use feed-forward neural networks, then that is possible. Maybe it is going to compete with that. More data points, that is what we lacked, because the cyclone recording is every 6 hours. If it was like every 2 hours or every 3 hours, then we would got more data points and the model will be more accurate. So that is something that is needed. Other things that we can look at is not just the trek. We have explored the trek, but maybe the sea surface temperature or the other factors can help us in checking rapid intensification. And in future work, there can always be a cloud computing infrastructure as a service for computation, real-time implementation in our school plans for IRORO or ORORO. that we discussed, that was shown last week, it could be implemented using that for. So it's like as soon as there's a cyclone warning, then the cloud infrastructure starts to grab data from some source from the weather station, and it starts to make predictions right away and feeds into some mobile application as well. So that is a small application can be developed by a student possibly in their thesis. So we have done the work, and that is possible. Okay, so other aspect of cyclone is the track, how to predict, if we could predict the track and the wind intensity prediction. Track is which way the cyclone is moving, and the wind intensity is how strong the cyclone is. And when you look at cyclones, the way we imagine it when we discuss it, it's basically like in a room you throw a lot of snakes and let them move. I know it sounds very scary, but that's how cyclones move anyhow. So to predict which way they will move is an interesting situation. So we did some work using RNN architecture. We have one single recurrent neural network to predict the wind intensity and the track. And then we had other recurrent neural networks, one just for track prediction and another for wind intensity, where just one input neuron. Let's just discuss, these are some of the results, and there's a lot of results actually. It's difficult to discuss in a short presentation, but for the South Pacific, we just took some cases of few cyclones, 8 or 10 cyclones, and tried to check the prediction performance. And this is from the South Indian Ocean. And this is just from one single experimental run. And the wind intensity prediction, sorry, I did not include the results. And in this work, we are going to present at the International Joint Conference on Neural Networks. That's in Ireland in July. That's tracks, and the wind is in Japan. That's next month. The wind intensity in Congress on Evolutionary Computation. So, yep.
How much time do you predict in hours?
Yeah, it's a 6. No, it's that's what I was saying. The data points. Each data point is 6 hours. So the
So you would have to switch to the next
6 hours. Yeah, that's the.
and then maybe something 2 hours.
If we feed it back to the.
Can you get something like you all see these maps with these boundaries, shades, like
Yeah.
kind of where it will be approximately.
It could happen because we have to feed the predicted back into the neural network.
Yeah, but also just for one prediction, do you have something like boundaries? That the network specific,
We did not do it, but it could. We could have a separate research that continues that research where it takes the. Actually,
or where you perturb the input a bit and see what's
actually that's I'm looking for. Yeah, that's a. Thank you for reminding me. It's a multiple step ahead prediction. We have to check the performance of feedforward and recurrent neural network, which one is better in multiple steps. So basically, you train the neural network. Do not and after training, you can try 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, and see the how good they are. And we have not done that.
the next play will not be great, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and it's from a neural network perspective, it's a good investigation in terms of checking how good is the architecture. Like is the recurrent architecture actually good in doing long-term step ahead prediction due to its feedback connection. So it's going to be a significant contribution in that term. We had that one in mind, but I think we have to write it down. So,
Yeah, that seems like robust. So if
yeah,
you get one step ahead of me, weather data is also not perfect.
that's the other thing.
Feed and perturb.
Yes. What happened? We had the data from 1970s, but we used 1980 ahead because the 1970s or 60s to 80, there were a lot of missing values. So, but we could do some tests on them as well. So two-dimensional time series. This is the first time for me to apply these architectures into two-dimensional time series. This is Trek because it is the latitude and the longitude. It's very difficult, generally more difficult in a single dimension, but we see some that it has some scope that neural networks can go in that area. We have not actually the literature out there for multi-dimensional time series is less. There's not that much of work done for multi-dimensional time series, and there is not we are not aware of some benchmark data like for the single-dimensional time series. There's Sunspot and all this Mackey-Glass, Lorentz data sets as benchmark, but in multi-dimensionals we couldn't see that much. So in a way, these published results will become our benchmark data. So we can we'll allow other people to use this data and then compare with these results. So the strengths and limitations in the longer run, coevolutionary methods is in terms of training time. Actually, what happened, we gave the extension of the speed paper to one of the journals, and they said, why didn't you use backpropagation through time? So we had to redo the experiments, and then we found that backpropagation through time is an older algorithm, which was 10 times faster, but the performance was not as strong as the coevolutionary methods. So which is taking 10 times slower, so it takes more number of function evaluations, like 20,000 function evaluations, and backpropagation around 2,000 to reach around similar accuracy. But overall, multiple experiments, we found that in general the backpropagation was not as good as the evolutionary methods. So there's a trade-off between computation times in terms of training and prediction accuracy. One thing that most people, when they talk about implementing computational intelligence methods in real time, they actually confuse one thing when it says training. Training doesn't mean that a cyclone is coming, then I will start to train my model. The model would be trained and left from the previous seasons, and it will just straight away do the prediction. So it doesn't mean that, so the training time is not actually an issue. And that is usually complained when some other methods, some people use non-evolutionary methods and they say, oh, our method is faster, you know. But what we want is more accuracy. So another area is energy load forecasting, and we have not got this paper through. We are doing more work on it. So we got this time series data for the energy load from New South Wales and Victoria last year, and we are doing a lot of experiments on that. And the coevolutionary methods were very slow, so we are in the term of developing hybrid coevolutionary and backpropagation or gradient descent methods to increase this, and we are currently doing more work on this area. So we have all this energy load time series, and there's like quite large data sets, like 17,000 points, you know, or 20,000 points, whereas we have been dealing with the cyclones, we have 2,000 or 3,000 points. So the training, it took like 2 days or 3 days, just one experiment. So that is why I think you may have heard that 6 months ago I was running around for computation power, and even went all the way to Google and Amazon cloud, but still could not meet my needs at that time. So we got some results from different number of hidden neurons for the MAPE and mean absolute error for the New South Wales and Victoria data set. And this is actually the data set where there's the training, and you see there's these issues here where the predicted and the original, there's large gaps. So we have 2 students who are developing some other algorithms to apply to these areas. And that I will discuss in the directions of future research. Computational intelligence methods can be used to compare the results. We do not want to say that we are a group that will be there. We are strong, we only want to limit ourselves to evolutionary algorithms. That's not true. We want to actually use the best algorithm out there, but still combine it with evolutionary algorithms because it has shown a lot of interest over the years, and we have a lot of software and things. Neuro-evolution and gradient-based algorithms. Uh, uh, the system can be, so instead of, like we had the 2 or the 3 different islands, one island can be a backpropagation. And Gary Wong is actually working on that area here, and we are going to apply that to the energy load forecasting. And another novel method, we have thought about some ideas, and Mr. Ratnil Deo will be looking at that towards his master's probably or later, to apply to make some contribution in the area of multidimensional time series, where we have one neural network that does multidimensional. At the moment, we have found that if you have several neural networks, like separate neural network for each dimension, then that is better than one neural network which does the 3 dimensions altogether. But we want to have some training algorithms and strategies so that the one neural network with several dimensions can match up to the separate neural networks. This is the reason we want to do this is for theoretical motivations, that one neural network is supposed to represent most of these problems. So comparisons of results with statistical methods, so that are used by the weather stations or weather prediction problems methods. So whatever they are using, we would like to compare these methods with them. And another is try cyclone track sinuosity predictions and generate some GIS maps, so with Dr. Nick Rawlings. So that is most of my work on cyclones and neural networks, and I just briefly discuss that we are also working in the area of computer vision with the co-evolutionary convolutional neural networks. So we're building, applying to videos, applying to building smart systems for the visually impaired persons. So basically the higher end motivation is that a time when a visually impaired person just has a camera which has glasses with some camera in there, and they are working, and the system should be identifying people's faces and objects and basically forms a bigger guidance for the visually impaired person. And of course, GPS and all those things are there. So we are also doing work for them and the physically disabled persons. This is the next 5 years, for the next 5 years, but we've done some work and published a technical report in arXiv. So just take a few minutes to quickly show that all the software that we have developed so far in the last, actually from my side in the last 8 or 10 years, I'm just trying to take it out so that the new students or new researchers can visit and preview them through Bitbucket. So we've placed them in Bitbucket, and so you can commit to them and view the source for each of these evolutionary computation or the neural networks and related areas. And so you can view all the source and the softwares. They are not in very good shape, so we have to develop a lot of manuals. So there are at least 10 of them. And otherwise, you just download the software bundle version 1.1 that just came out today for some reason. And you can download the whole code and or preview our links are in Dropbox. From our Dropbox public link, you can view the code, and also the cyclone the cyclone track is there. So basically, for example, the data is there, and some of you may be interested to see the cyclone track data. So the cyclone data is there, and just for South Pacific, we place the tracks there, and basically this is the raw data, and of all the cyclones in the South Pacific for some dates, 2006 to 2000 something. So that's for the testing set, and this is the XY coordinate, and then what we have is the processed data, which the recurrent neural network takes in small window steps. I don't know what that is. Why it says Skype? Oh, okay. So it becomes like a number, I guess. Anyways, this and the code that just takes the input and processes into that format. So that's read by the neural network, which is in other folders, for example. So this is very good for even teaching and learning in postgraduate and research. Like if somebody wants to know about feed-forward neural network, or here is recurrent neural network, and they can just download this and download that data set, and they just need to change this path, so that instead of home Rohit Dropbox, it's the data. So wherever the data is sitting, and download the data, and the whole code is here. And one of the things is that feed-forward neural networks is readily available, but recurrent neural networks, it's difficult to get. And in MATLAB, I think there's an implementation, but you wouldn't find implementations which has neuro-evolution or co-evolutionary algorithms, and all of those are being released here. So that's the most of it. And basically, if you would like to see some of these papers or read my papers, just join ResearchGate, and you can download all my papers there. Although it's not so the papers, for example, the feed for pattern classification, or even those papers that are going to be presented at the conference, it's going to be there. So you can easily download them. So thank you, and any questions?
Thank you very much. We have 2 minutes for some short questions from the audience. Yes. For your cyclone prediction, I've seen this been done by the weather station. What are we using at this point?
We did in the paper. We did the background, which was written by the meteorologist, because our co-author is a meteorologist. So there are some statistical methods they use called ships and other methods. But one thing is, the weather stations, they have a lot of competition when they are predicting. So the standard models that we know, they have reported that are there, they may be like 10 or 20 or 15 or 20 years old. But what they are using now, they are not going to tell, because they may have a better model, but they are not, it's not like open source that they will tell the other weather station. So they have a competition, and it's a business model, like you have Nandraki weather, the other weathers, the New Zealand meteorology, they are all competing for a better results.
Because I do recall, they always, on the newspapers and the warnings, they always say, it's going to take this path, possibly.
Yes. So the path, actually, they just do not look at the time series, but they also look at the formation of the clouds and the sea surface temperature. So there is a lot of correlation between the way it moves and the sea surface temperature as well. So like we have given a prediction, the neural network, let's say, is given a prediction, then we have to check the cloud formation, sea surface temperatures, and that's where some of the expert knowledge comes. But I think there have also been some work done where some neural networks or computer vision algorithms have been used to make automatic prediction based on the photos of the clouds. Yeah.
Again, for the energy load forecasting, electricity load, did anyone check up with what Fiji Electricity Authority is using? Because they're doing some forecasting. I know you're researching on New South Wales, but there
Yeah.
are some established techniques which
Are
are
they?
being used.
Actually, yeah, we're just getting into this area, but the team that we worked with in the New South Wales,
Yeah.
they are experts, really experts in the area, and that research group from University of Sydney, they have thousands of dollars of grants from the companies that gave them the data set. So that energy load data is kind of confidential in a way,
Okay.
and the postdoc student kind of, the postdoc researcher kind of worked with us for that. So, but they have used the latest neural network methods, but there was recurrent neural networks were not used in the past, but it did not give that good performance. So we're still looking into improving it by exploring other training algorithms.
Sorry, just to comment. What they do in Fiji is that they have an established system, but the established system is not as good. So they have some prediction, but just in case they have what they call a reserve generator on, ready to take on any extra load,
Mm.
just in case there's some sudden spike in load and they're ready to supply. But so that means their prediction is they're allowing for a large margin of error of about 10% or something.